And I think we are live. Bear with me for 2 seconds. I'm just going to double check that this stream is going out live before I get started. And it looks like we are all good, I think. Just bear with me for 1 second. I'll make sure that this is up and running. And we're all good. So, yeah, I wanted to do a live stream following on from the Boxnation build tonight. You know, it's not a huge bill in terms of marquee fighters and marquee fights. I didn't necessarily think it was worth doing separate videos on each fight on the card, etc. But I thought there were some interesting prospects on the card. Clearly, the main event was a fantastic fight, which we'll come on to in just a second. So I thought we're going to do a live stream. So plan for tonight, probably run for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, something like that. We'll see how it takes us. Going to start off by discussing Boy Jones Jr. versus Craig Poxton, the main event. We'll then start at the beginning of the card and work our way through and discuss each fight. Plan for this is to make it quite interactive with the chat. So what I'll do is I'll throw in my thoughts, you know, on each of the fights. Then we'll go into the chat and, you know, get some people's opinions and read them out live on the channel. So first things first, can see we currently have 36 people watching live, which isn't bad considering we're 1 minute into a live stream at 11:30 on a Friday night. So I'll give a quick few shout outs to people in the chat, to Chelly, to Mikey, to Lewis, to Matt, to YouTube, to Ed, to Chris, to Gerard, to Rob, to Sam, to Mason, to Modern Broadcast. Thanks all very much for joining me live tonight, and hopefully you guys will hang around and get involved in some of the discussion. Anyway, let's go straight into it and let's talk about the main event. We've had some great boxing already in 2017. You know, we've had James DeGale, Badu Jack. We've had Louis Santa Cruz versus Carl Frampton. Those fights, they're arguably bigger name fights. Not arguably, they're definitely bigger name fights than what we saw today at York Hall. For me, as of the 24th of February, Boy Jones Jr. versus Craig Poxton is the fight of the year to date. And it's going to be really, really difficult for any fight to surpass that throughout the course of the year. It was a 10-round fight at York Hall for Boy Jones Jr.'s super featherweight Southern area title. Boy Jones Jr. came to the ring, 12 fights, 11 wins, 1 draw. Craig Poxton, 15 fights, 11 wins, 4 losses. Boy Jones was a big favourite in this fight, big favourite. Poxton was the smaller man. You know, he said he was going to campaign in the lower weight class at featherweight as opposed to super featherweight. And Boy Jones Jr. really was hulking over him in the ring. Poxton had come up short before at Southern area level, and I guess it was kind of assumed that Boy Jones Jr. would have enough to get the win. But Poxton really impressed me tonight. He used Boy Jones Jr.'s tactics against him in this fight. The hunter became the hunted. We're so used to seeing Boy Jones Jr. Walking opponents down, cutting down the ring of the opponents, and unloading heavy artillery on them. Well, that's exactly what Poxton did tonight. You know, he presser. It reminded me of Crolla versus Barroso, of Liam Smith versus John Thompson. You know, he was marching forward with a high guard. He was making Boy Jones Jr. do a lot of work, and he was really walking him down. Because Poxton was a lot shorter, and because at the start of the fight in particular, he had a lot of head movement and a lot of upper body movement, he was kind of creating very good angles to land his punches on Boy Jones Jr. In many ways, it was kind of like a peekaboo style. You know, he was coming in, he was bobbing, he was weaving, he was getting so low. You know, he was putting a huge amount of punch output on Boy Jones Jr. So it was kind of a taste of his own medicine on Boy Jones Jr. He was in against the guy who threw even more output and brought even more pressure than Boy Jones Jr. normally brings to the ring. So it developed into a truly fantastic scrap. You know, I gave the first couple of rounds to Poxton. I thought Boy Jones Jr. started to come into it towards the middle rounds, and then Poxton, who was horrifically cut towards the end of the fight, seemed to get his second wind and come again, and, you know, throw an immense amount of pressure down, and you know, really was landing at will on Boy Jones Jr. You know, we was timing Boy Jones Jr. so well. Poxton's timing was really nice, and Boy Jones Jr. was very upright. You know, he's very there to be hit. He was very vulnerable to getting caught and getting countered when he was engaging, and you know, he had limited head movement. His hands weren't in the right place, and Poxton caught him again and again and again and again. Boy Jones, I think he knew he was behind on the cards. His corner had told him that he needed to get a stoppage, and he just threw everything into it. You know, threw everything into it, and he was exhausted. And I'm not really sure how you know, how hurt he was by Poxton in the end, but Poxton just kept landing on him. Poxton's clearly not the massivest puncher in the world. He's clearly not as big a guy as Boy Jones Jr., but the relentlessness and the continued clean punches Boy Jones were taking. He went down twice in the last round, and with about 30 seconds left, his corner threw in the towel, which I think was the sensible thing to do. I couldn't help feeling sad for Boy Jones Jr. You know, he's 20 years old, but he looked like he was 12 years old. It really kind of looked like a man versus a boy in there, despite the size difference. And yeah, I felt sorry for him. You know, he put in a tremendous effort, and he does certain things very, very well in there. Very, very well in there. He throws to the body extremely well for a tall guy with long arms. He throws a beautiful short and uppercut on the inside so well for a guy with, you know, with such big range. But he's got a great engine as well, Boy Jones Jr. But what he didn't have is any sort of defensive awareness, any, you know, versatility. And he was weak on the back foot. He was weak defensively, and he really had no jab, Boy Jones Jr. When he did use his jab, it was ineffective. Often it was inaccurate. You know, he didn't in any way look to double up that jab. He didn't ever, you know, he was missing with the jab to the head. It never occurred to him to jab to the chest, you know, to try and keep the guy off him. You know, if you're going to be 6 foot tall in the super featherweight division, you're going to be up against smaller, more powerful men than you. So you've really got to commit to that jab. And I know Boy Jones Jr. is always going to be the kind of guy who likes to get on top in fights and, you know, likes to put power punches together and bring pressure. And I'm not saying he should derogate from that. But, you know, in quieter rounds or in rounds when the opponent's trying to get all over him, if he was able to land 5 or 6 clean jabs a round, I think that would make a big difference. Yeah, Boy Jones can bounce back from this. In the moments he was actually in top on this fight, and there were a few moments, there was one moment in particular where Poxton was hurt. You could see when Boy Jones Jr. got on top how good he was, you know, and he almost stopped Poxton. Poxton was saved by the bell in one round. You know, Poxton was eating a lot of shots to the body, a lot of uppercuts, and you know, Boy Jones Jr. really was doing some nice stuff in there. He's got some real capabilities, and he really can come again. But he needs to work on his defense. He needs to work on his jab, and he needs to work out how he's going to deal with a guy like Craig Poxton. I'd love to see the rematch. I think a rematch is. You know, is very likely. It was, as I say, a fight of the year contender, and both men will fancy the rematch. Boy Jones Jr. Was beaten fair and square tonight. You know, had this gone to the cards, realistically, I'd have had Craig Poxton 7-3 up or something like that. So let's go to the chat. So guys in the chat, firstly, a few questions for you, and I'll try and read your comments out. Who did you have ahead at the time of the stoppage? You know, did you have it close? Did you have Poxton by a while? Who do you think would win a rematch? What do you think is the upside for both guys? Leave your comments in the chat, and we will read them out live on the channel right now. Mikey has put Boy Jones Jr. can come again. These fights are how fighters grow, learning in tough fights, examining errors, and gaining experience against different styles, like Tyson Fury did all throughout his career. Good comment, Mikey. Certainly agree on that one, mate. Modern Broadcast says that cut, Poxton's cut, was like something for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Don't know how he lasted. Ed Harris put Poxton coming back and winning the 8th after getting cut was impressive. It really was. He showed a lot of heart. So anyway, let's go to the live chat. Michael's put clearly Poxton by a margin. Poxton shaded it. Modern Broadcast, I had Boy Jones by a round, BG, but it was swinging back and forth on my card. Really? I find it hard to believe that Boy Jones was ahead modern broadcast, but you know, it was fascinating. It would have been fascinating to see what the cards would have said if we had gone to a decision there. Mikey put, I'd actually back Poxton in a rematch. Just has the better experience and work rate. Jones would need a better jab. Yeah, I agree. Mason, evening Mason. Mason had Poxton 7-3 up. I agree with your scorecard there, Mason. Definitely. Yeah, I really like these cards, guys. You know, it is what it is. It's not a pay-per-view night. You know, it's not a. You know, you're not gonna see. You're not going to see you know, the big superstars, but these York All nights, you see some really nice prospects coming through, and you get some good fights like this. Team Groves said, really surprised. Was it one-sided off the start? To be honest, Team Groves, for my money, Poxton started strong. He won the first 2 rounds nicely, and Boy Jones Jr. never really leveled it up. You know, he was ahead throughout. Really, there's 1 or 2 moments where Boy Jones, who, despite getting stopped, Boy Jones may have been the bigger puncher and seemed to wobble Poxton, and there were 1 or 2 moments like that. So, but yeah, interesting. Same says he had Poxton 7-3 up. So there you go. I hope Boy Jones Jr. does come back. You know, as I said, he does some things really, really well in there, and he is only 20, and he has shown improvements. You know, great body puncher for his size, great inside uppercut. He actually showed improved footwork today. You know, some of the pivots he was doing and stuff were really quite decent in there. But defensive awareness, head movement, committing to a jab, holding, you know, big areas of improvement for him. Karen says, I had Boy Jones winning, probably because I had him in my accumulator. Gerard says, what a battering for Boy Jones. I had him losing badly on the cards, possibly 8-2. Same Hussein says, not fight of the year, lacks punching power. I completely disagree. If that's not fight of the year, what is? What fight so far this year has been better than that? Mikey has put, these cards are the type you'd be better off watching live at the arena instead of the TV. Yeah, well, my podcast colleague Iris Tom was there tonight, so we'll be asking him about that on the podcast on Wednesday. Let's have a look. Louis says Poxton had odds of 9-1. Wonder if anyone had a punt. Team Groves, I saw most of the undercards, some decent prospects. Matt Spinks had Poxton up 8-2. Same Hussein says the Gale Jack fight of the year. You know, the Gale Jack was a higher class fight than this, but for me, for guts and action, this was fight of the year so far. Anyway, let's move it on. But yeah, very impressed by Craig Poxton. Huge output, huge work rate, great chin, great timing, great tactics, and a huge amount of heart. Well done, Craig Poxton. Massive shout out to you. Boy Jones Jr. can't help but feeling sorry for him. Let's hope he comes again. So that's the main event. My fight of the year to date so far. We're now going to work our way through the undercard. We got 52 people watching live. If you're one of those watching live, please hit the thumbs up button to support this and help me get some more people joining and watching live tonight, guys. And we will start with the first fight of the night. DP Carr, 6-0 versus Lewis Jones. 2 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws. Now I've got to say, you know, I'm critical of the Sky commentary from time to time. So in the fairness of being even-handed, that I've been critical of Sky in the past, I've got to be somewhat critical of the Boxnation commentary here tonight. You know, the way they were describing this Lewis Jones, he's an experienced guy. He's a real step up. You know, he carries a bit of power. You know, this is a guy who hadn't fought in years. This is a guy who hadn't fought since 2015, who was brought in as a late notice opponent. You know, his record, he stepped into the ring 7 times and he's only won twice. You know, the way the Boxnation commentators were making it out tonight, you'd have thought DP Carr was fighting someone at British level or something like that. Now, I've seen DP Carr fight before. I've actually seen him fight live twice, I think, at York Hall. And he's never been someone that I've been overly impressed with. And again, Boxnation were making out tonight that he was some massive power puncher. You know, I've seen this guy box in the flesh. He isn't he isn't a big puncher. For me, he's a guy who continuously smothers his work. I think he struggles with judging distance, and I think he struggles to find his range. And at time, I think he can be kind of messy in there, and as a result, his work isn't as clean and as crisp and as clinical as it should be. Maybe he does have huge amounts of power, and he's just not landing it as crisply as he should be doing. But the way the Boxnation commentators were going on tonight, you'd think he was like a Deontay Wilder style puncher. So people may have been surprised to see him labouring to victory against Lewis Jones, who, as I say, has 2 wins from 7 in-ring appearances. Lewis Jones, you could see that he had some schooling in there. Maybe apparently he had some sort of amateur pedigree. And you could see that he had some skills and some ring savvy, and he was causing problems for DP Carr. The judges seemed to give every round to DP Carr. In fact, the referee scored it. But I'd have given 1 or 2 rounds in a 6-rounder to Lewis Jones. I thought at times, despite the fact DP Carr deserved to win the fight, obviously he scored a knockdown in the first round. I thought Lewis Jones made him look pretty average in there. And for DP Carr, I find it hard to see what Frank Warren's going to do with him. I really can't work out how they're going to navigate this guy to English or British level. And I know not every fighter has to be navigated to that sort of heights, but the guy's 7-0. He's 27 years old. He's not like a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old. He's 27 years old. He's 6-0, and he hasn't fought anyone with someone even remotely resembling a winning record yet. All of his fights have been against people with losing records and sometimes bad losing records. And, he's not looking particularly fantastic in these fights. So, I'm not sure what kind of upside there is for him. So let's quickly go out to the chat on DP Carr versus Lewis Jones. Let's see if anyone's got any comments on DP Carr, if you saw him box tonight, or I've seen him box in the past. Leave your comments in the chat and I'll read them out live on the stream. Sean Drayton says, love your show, mate. Cheers, Sean. Mason says he might be in line to fight my cousin for the Southern Area title. Mason's cousin is Jordan Dennis. For me, DP Carr is even Southern Area level. Matt Spink says he had DP Carr losing the last 2 rounds. I probably agree. Yeah, he didn't look anything special in there. And as I say, I've seen him box a few times, and I'm wondering what the plan is with him, where they're going to take him. Joe Nelly says he seconds that. It's a great show. Appreciate that, Joe. Thanks for the support, mate. It doesn't look like the 54 people watching are overly keen to discuss DP Carr, so we'll move on to the next topic. Matt says he'll need to work on his defence to even be in competition for the English title. Completely agree with your analysis there. And to be honest, he was made to look pretty poor by the next prospect on the bill, Charlie Driscoll, who was 3-0, and he fought journeyman Dan Carr, who had 3 wins out of 88 ring appearances. So 88 fights, 3 wins, whereas Charlie Driscoll, 3 fights, 3 wins. Won't be surprised to hear that Charlie Driscoll won comfortably on points against Dan Carr. But Driscoll, for me, looked like a much hotter prospect than DP Carr. Driscoll, very, very rangy guy. I think he's 5'11" as a light welterweight or something like that. And there were at times that his height was potentially a bit against him. He was very, very, very straight up in the air. He had, he was kind of fighting a bit tall at times, which was a bit dangerous, I think, for him. But he showed some real skills in there. He was very calm. He was very composed. Defensively, he was decent. He'd kind of roll and put a hand up, which was nice. He worked his jab well. He was light on his feet. He looked like somebody who was very comfortable in the ring. He looked like somebody who had a lot more experience than 3-0. And he kind of reminded me stylistically of like a Bradley Skeet, a Tyrone Nurse, a Scotty Cardle. You know, that kind of fighter, clearly not a big power puncher, but someone who's quite smooth, someone who's quite composed and calm and cool in the ring. And I thought he boxed really, really nicely, actually. I thought he put punches together really well. Look, he was in against a guy who had, as I say, 88 fights, only 3 wins. So he's performing at a very, very low level. Another guy who's not been near anyone yet with a winning record. But he's a younger guy. He's a lot younger than DP Carr. He's had less fights than DP Carr. And for me, his upside is much, much higher. And he's someone I'd be interested to see again. Very, very hot domestic divisions in the lightweight and light welterweight divisions. So let's see how Charlie Driscoll progresses. Let's have him in 2 or 3 more fights on these kind of Boxnation York Hall bills, and and let's see what your take is. What Frank can do with him. So let me know your comments in the chat about Charlie Driscoll, if anyone's seen him tonight or seen him before. How do you think he performed? Were you impressed by him? I personally thought he was decent. Yeah. Let's have a look in the chat, see what anyone's saying. They're talking about Dan Carr. He's only been stopped once in 85 defeats. Mikey says, journeyman is tough as hell and master of defensive stature very well. Born survivors. He asked my thoughts on John O'Carroll. I think John O'Carroll is bang average. I think you're spot on there, Mikey. I don't think, I know he won prize fight. I don't think he's got much more to offer than that in a strong division. Matt Spinks says, how did Naylor Ball get on? Naylor Ball was a heavyweight debutant. He won easily by knockout. He knocked the guy down 3 times. Unfortunately, it wasn't televised. I think that's disappointing, and I think it's poor from Boxnation. A heavyweight debutant, a heavyweight prospect is always going to create more interest. And I don't want to be down on DP Carr again. It sounds like I'm just tearing into him. But, for me, if I had a choice between seeing DP Carr fight someone with a losing record or, a heavyweight prospect, it seems like madness not to put the heavyweight prospect on live TV. But there you go. Right. We'll move on to the next fight. Lerone Richards, 5-0, fought Attila Naggie, 10 wins out of 35 appearances. Lerone Richards, highly regarded prospect. Billy Joe Saunders thinks he's going to be the next big thing. All sorts of rumours that he smashed up Chris Eubank Jr. in sparring. Having watched this fight, I was really excited to see Lerone Richards tonight. Really, really, really excited. Because I've heard so much good stuff about him. And having watched the fight tonight, he does look like a very good prospect. He's kind of an old school boxer. He's very smooth. He's very calm. He's one for the purists, quite smooth, quite slick. If I'm honest, do I see him smashing up Chris Eubank Jr. In sparring after watching that? Probably not, no. He didn't look like he carried much punching power. He didn't look really like he was able to go through the gears tonight. He was very much standing off his opponent, making his opponent miss. He was fighting an opponent who was much, much smaller than him, and whenever the opponent came forward, he literally was content to step out of range and avoid getting hit, work the jab. It was all quite slow paced, it was. And I was a little bit disappointed, He was very smooth in there. You could see him going away in the sport. But the way Billy Joe was talking about him and all of these rumours about how he was doing with Eubank, I just thought there'd be a bit more snap to him. He was in against a very low-level opponent, and his punches didn't really seem to be having the desired effect on his opponent. And if I were him, I'd be looking to put on a show. I understand Lerone Richards currently works 2 jobs alongside being a professional boxer. I believe I'm correct in saying he works part-time in Tesco's to support himself, which is, it's commendable. But to be honest, he wants to stop working at Tesco's and he wants to become a named boxer. And, opportunities like this live on TV are opportunities to, if he was going out there smashing people up, in 2 or 3 fights time, I'm sure he'd pick up sponsorship. I'm sure he'd, be able to move away from working part-time in Tesco's and that sort of thing. And I just kind of felt slightly disappointed that he didn't go through the gears as much as he could have done tonight. You know, that opponent was unable to hit him. That opponent was unable to hurt him. And, you know, from the first round, really, Richards' corner were trying to gear him up. They were trying to say, you know, get this guy out of there. You know, like he's there to be taken. And Lerone Richards just didn't really respond to that. You know, he stayed very calm. He stayed very composed. And I saw him. I follow him on Facebook. He put something up on Facebook after the fight saying something like, "Very pleased. Skills, you know, skills pay the bills," or something like that. But for me, I think he needs to understand that skills pay the bills to a certain extent. But if you want to be a star, if you want to be headlining events, you've got to be involved in entertaining fights like Boy Jones Jr. was tonight. You know, Lerone Richards is probably a better fighter than Boy Jones technically. But I guarantee Boy Jones earned more money tonight and gained more fans tonight. You know, it's not all about pure skills when you're trying to create your name. And I just felt, you know, I'm not being down on Lerone Richards because he won on points, but I just felt he could have so easily won by knockout tonight. That I was just disappointed he didn't really offer more in this fight. Let's go to the chat. What are your views on Lerone Richards, people? Do you share my opinion tonight that he could have maybe done a bit more? How high do you think his upside is? Is this a guy who can fight at British title level? Is this a guy who can go to European level, world level? And I'm also interested to ask you guys, what weight class do you think he'll end up at? You know, he didn't look like he was ultra cut down tonight, but his frame looked really, really massive. Just bear with me for like 10 seconds. I'm literally just going to grab a glass of water. Because all this talking is firstly work. Right, we've got some water, so hopefully my throat will hold up for the rest of this live stream. Mikey has put, Lerone Richards will be good when he steps up. Nurse stunk the place out, but is now delivering entertainment in tougher fights. Yeah, well, let's hope that's the case. But Lerone Richards, for me, is a guy who, you know, has that capability to be fighting in British title fights relatively swiftly. You know, maybe late 2017, early 2018. But it's going to be hard for him to commercially put himself in that kind of place. You know, if he's fighting in fights like that. Del Boy and Mikey say no beers tonight. No, I'm running a marathon in April, so I'm kind of off the beer at the minute. Trying to get myself into I'm trying to get myself in some sort of shape, and I'm in better shape than one of the fighters who fought on tonight's bill, actually, who, funnily enough, we may well come to next. Yes, Harley Ben. Harley Ben, where do we start? Look, boxing, I say this in a lot of my videos, boxing is not a beauty contest. Not every fighter has to have a six-pack, you know, abs like Anthony Joshua. Not every fighter has got to have bulging biceps. But realistically, if you live the fighter's life, if you, you know, if you are somebody who's training hard and dedicating yourself to dieting and living the life and, you know, being an athlete, you should probably not have a physique like Harley Ben. I'm going to throw it out there and say 50% of the people watching this live stream probably have a better physique than Harley Ben, which isn't really, really a great sign. You know, I heard somebody in the chat earlier saying he's got a belly physique, and to be honest, that's the case. He was fighting at super middleweight tonight, and I think he's very small for a super middleweight. People were saying that he should be fighting at middleweight. I'd go one further than that. You know, I think he could be fighting at light middleweight. To be honest, I think that if he got himself on a diet and did a bit of cardio and tried to cut down some body fat, he'd make light middleweight, you know, really without too much trouble. Because his conditioning looked so poor, I was actually genuinely worried he was going to punch himself out in that fight. He wasn't very disciplined, was very raw, very green, too aggressive, too wild. And, you know, he finished his opponent in the second round with 50 unanswered punches. And, you know, had he been fighting at even a slightly higher level, he could have been taken out tonight. You know, because, you know, he really was, you know, just wild and open. He was fighting Dominic Zuko, who had 2 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. So, you know, he was obviously fighting a guy at a certain level. But for me, Harley Ben looked really, really average in there. And I know the Boxnation commentators were keen to, you know, were keen to remind us over and over again that he had no amateur pedigree. But what I've got to say is, you know, I've been critical about Conor Ben on this channel. Funnily enough, I've made similar comments that Conor Ben's fighting a weight class or 2 too high. But technically, Conor Ben is a level above Harley Ben. You know, Harley Ben for me is, you know, I've seen more sophisticated boxing in a brawl at the local Wetherspoons. You know, I'm not really trying to go in here, but you know, it was pretty ropey stuff. The guy was clearly nervous. It was his debut. He's obviously got a lot of pressure on his shoulders with his father's surname. You know, maybe he'll be a different fighter second time out. You know, but really, you know, that's the guy who's not going to get anywhere near Southern area level unless he reinvents himself for his second, third, and fourth fights. Amir Khan's chin has put, I thought that Ben should have been at 154. Matt Spinks had 2 punches landed out of 30 before the TKO. Sam says he's 5'7", he should be at welterweight. Mikey says another Ben not in the right weight class. And Mikey also says Harley's punches will have 0 effect if he stays in shape through the levels. He'll get found out badly. Jared says he missed with about 45 LMBG. It was the body punch that finished it. Matt Spinks says Ben is 5'7" and fighting at 168. Wow. Mason Grant says I wasn't impressed with Harley. Super middleweight is a dangerous division for him, especially with his build and his height. Jared says he was dreadful, really dreadful. Mikey said, I wonder if Warren will put Harley under the radar to improve him like he did with Prince Patel. Poor performances may damage the name, credibility, albeit he's only a prospect. Possibly. I wonder if, you know, let's be honest, that Harley Ben could easily make, well, not welterweight. He could make light middleweight. Maybe he could make light welterweight. Maybe he could make welterweight. I wonder if there's plans to put Eubank's son in with Harley Ben. Nathaniel, I forget the guy's name now. Nathaniel Wilson. I actually saw Nathaniel Wilson box live at York Hall myself once, and he's another guy. I think he's probably better than Harley Ben, but he's another guy who doesn't look too great for me, to be honest. I saw him struggling a bit with a journeyman the night I was there. But we'll see. Maybe it's going to be, maybe we'll see Ben Eubank as a York Hall classic in 5 or 6 types. Fine. But yeah, Harley Ben, you know, the chat seems to be fairly unanimous that they weren't overly enamored with his performance tonight. Let's move on. Zach Chelly, debut against Jacob Lucas, who had 7 wins, sorry, who had 7 fights with 0 wins. Zach Chelly actually looked quite decent in there. He almost reminded me of like a sort of a Chris Eubank Jr., Leon Woodstock type fighter, in the sense that lots of head movement, getting low, very explosive, you know, someone who stayed outside the pocket, you know, flashing head movement, looking for a gap to explode into range, you know, almost like a sort of early David Hay type style, where he'd stay on the outside with his athleticism, and he clearly is an athlete, and then sort of explode into range. He landed some absolute haymakers on Jacob Lucas, including a punch in the first 15, 20 seconds of the fight that I thought would chop down a tree. So I'm not sure he's naturally the heaviest handed guy, because Jacob Lucas was able to eat a lot of those punches. But, you know, Chelly certainly had a lot of energy inside the pocket. When he put punches together, he put punches together very, very nicely. He had natural hand speed. He was a natural athlete, and there was clearly a bit of snap to his work. They rate him very highly. I think his corner was saying that he's ready to challenge for the British title of 7 or 8 fights. I wouldn't go that far, but I'd certainly like to see him again. And he's possibly a name that we can throw into the mix. I think he weighed in as a super middleweight tonight. Maybe he'll make middleweight in the long run. Obviously, probably hasn't killed himself making weight for this fight, but maybe there's maybe he'll make middleweight. But he's someone who certainly, for me, we talk about some of these prospects. DP Carr, Harley Ben. These are guys who are going to struggle at area level for me. Driscoll, Lerone Richards, Zach Chelly, if one of those names picked up a British title or maybe went on for a European belt at some stage, they're looking to me like they've got the goods to at least be in that conversation in 10 fights time. Let's put it that way. Modern Broadcast said Chelly looked all right. He reminds me of Jose Burton. Matt Spinks said Chelly looked good for a debutant. Nothing bad to say about him from that performance. Mikey said his favourite fighting style is long-range guys with strong jabs and footwork. There we go. So if anyone else has got any comments at all on Zach Chelly, please leave them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll keep it moving. Got 55 people watching live now, guys. So if you're one of those watching live, please hit the thumbs up button and please subscribe to the channel. Matt Spinks says Conor Ben will probably struggle at Southern Area title too. Conor Ben's a guy. He's an inconsistent performer. Some fights you see him and you think he's journeyman standard. He's so rough and ready. But sometimes I've seen him box quite nicely in there. I think he's probably Southern Area level at 147 pounds. I think at 135 pounds, he may be slightly higher than that. But certainly I wouldn't be pumping him as a world title level fighter at this point. So there you go. Let's move it on. Commonwealth title fight. Jay Harris, 9-0. Defeats Thomas Asoma, 7 wins, 2 losses, over 12 rounds in a competitive Commonwealth flyweight title fight. Jay Harris hadn't been beyond 4 rounds before. He fought 12 rounds tonight, and he actually came on strong in some of the later rounds. Asoma had a good round in the last, but credit to Harris, having never gone beyond 4 rounds to stepping up to this sort of level. I actually thought it was semi-irresponsible matchmaking not to have given him, an 8-rounder with someone who would definitely have gone the distance with him before chucking him in a fight like this. And there were certainly times in the fight where I thought that lack of experience was going to find him out, and that Asoma was going to rally in the middle to late rounds and get him out of there. And there were some hairy moments for Harris. If you're a Harris fan, there would have been some moments you'd have been on the edge of your seat in there tonight. It wasn't always comfortable viewing, but on the whole, I definitely think he did enough. I think the judges had it 8 rounds to 4, something like that, and that's probably about right. So let me know your thoughts on that. It's the first time I've seen Jay Harris box tonight, but how did you guys score it? I think 8-4 was probably fair enough. I could have agreed with 7-5. How good is Jay Harris? Do you think that he's someone who can go on and win a big fight after this? Were you impressed with him tonight? Mikey said, BG, will you do a live show after the Matchroom card tomorrow? I probably will, Mikey. I probably will. It depends if I'm entertaining tomorrow night, because I don't want to be antisocial. But yeah. I very possibly will do. I'm also possibly considering bringing back the live commentary tomorrow night. I understand that some of the early cards, possibly involving Dave Allen, will be streamed live on Facebook. So I was thinking what I may do is try and do a live commentary show for some of the early fights, then switch off, watch the card, and then do a show like this afterwards. So if you're interested in that, follow me on Twitter at Boxing Gossip. I'll tweet out a link. Add me on Facebook. My name is Tom BG. So add me on there and I'll post about it as well. And of course, subscribe to the channel and you'll get a notification. Jared says, okay, guys, assuming the Ossells who gave it a thumb down have left, there's 13 of you who needs to give it a thumbs up. Appreciate that, Jared. Thanks for the support. And I had to laugh that I got 9 thumbs down before it even went online tonight. You know, it's yeah. Appreciate the it's all good. Even if you don't like it, appreciate you clicking on the video. Modern Broadcast had it 116, 112 to Harris. Thought the judges were okay scoring wise. Matt Spinks had it 115, 113. Bruce Wayne says BG delivering top man. Appreciate that. Cam says he needs to step up to British level now though. Mikey says BG is the best YouTube channel. End of the real deal. I really appreciate that, Mikey. We'll see. I think there's some people who do it a bit better than I do at the minute, but we'll get there in a few years. And there's a few people in the chat talking about Zelfa Barrett, who's clearly very, very highly rated. I've seen him box a few times, and he certainly looks like a real player. So, yeah, certainly one to keep the eyes open for. Let's move it on. Sanjeev Sahota, 5-0 for Elmer Raphael. Now, I'm going to read out his full record because it's quite something. 34 wins. 105 losses, 4 draws. Sanjeev Sahota, I've seen box once before, and he looked absolutely terrible against Fons Alexander. And I think he was very, very lucky to get the win that night. He's another guy, Sanjeev Sahota. He hasn't fought anyone even approaching a winning record. But it sounds like he's got some high-profile backers, according to the Boxnation commentary tonight. And it sounds like he sells a lot of tickets, so perhaps he's being kept, kept safe. But for me, he's a disaster waiting to happen. He won tonight by second round knockout, by the way. The opponent literally had nothing, and Sahota just kind of flurried on him for the 2 rounds and wore him down and got him out of there. But Sahota is a presser fighter who gets involved in a brawl, throws a lot of leather, but he's got no power and no defense. And that's a real dangerous combination. If you're someone who comes forward throwing 100 punches around, or, I'm exaggerating, but if you're someone who comes forward throwing wildly, and you don't have the power to hurt your opponent, and you're, so defensively open, you're in big, big trouble. And if we've seen you hurt by Fons Alexander, who, with the greatest respect, is journeyman material, if you face anyone at any sort of level, then you're going to get knocked out. And Gerard's put in the chat, the opponent was absolutely bloody useless. Guys just covered up. Yeah, he's spot on, Gerard. He was looking to hold literally within the first 5 seconds of the bout. Had that been anyone live in there, Sanjeev Sahota would have probably been knocked out. And for me, he's not a prospect I've got interest in. It's funny, these Frank Warren shows, because Frank Warren's got some real hidden gems. He's got Charlie Driscoll. I hadn't even heard of him before tonight. Hidden gem. Lerone Richards, potentially a gem. Zach Chelly, potentially a gem. But there aren't half some dodgy fighters as well. Sanjeev Sahota, DP Carr and Harley Ben. How are they 3 undefeated fighters? Just none of them between them have fought anyone with a winning record. It's a bit bizarre. Let's see if anyone else has got anything else to throw into the mix about Sanjeev Sahota. Modern Broadcast said, I've just box wrecked his opponent. Yeah, he's 34, 105 and 4. Mikey put, the guy who Sahota banged out in a round must be atrocious. Yeah. You're not wrong, Mikey. Okay. Last fight to cover tonight. Archie Sharp, 6-0 versus Alex Phillips, 3-7-0. So 3 wins, 7 losses. Archie looked pretty decent in there. They were talking about him fighting Boy Jones Jr., obviously anticipating Boy Jones to come through against Craig Poxton. I imagine they'll want to do a Boy Jones Jr. versus Craig Poxton rematch now. I think that's an even bigger fight in a rematch. But Archie Sharp looked strong in there. I think he's only 21 or 22 or something like that. So there's no need to rush him. But yeah, he looked snappy. He looked aggressive, and I thought it was a relatively good performance. You know, he got his opponent out of there early. You know, there isn't too much to say about it. Again, it was a guy with a big losing record, as I say, 10 fights, only 3 wins. But nevertheless, you know, he looked relatively tidy in there. And I'm just looking at this super featherweight division in boxer, right? So this obviously hasn't been updated after tonight's fights, but you got Stephen Smith at number 1, Liam Smith at number 2, Martin Ward at 3. You've got names like Ronnie Clark, Andy Townend, Maxie Hughes. You've got Zelfa Barrett at 9. You had Boy Jones Jr. at 13. He'll probably go down after that. Leon Woodstock at 15. He's a guy I rate. Craig Poxton at 19. Obviously, he's going to jump up a bit. And then you got Archie Sharp to throw into the mix as well. So relatively live division there. Relatively live division. And some good fights to be made domestically. You know, Boy Jones Jr., he's a guy who's not going to be involved in dull fights. And to be fair, Craig Poxton doesn't look like he's going to be involved in dull fights after tonight. Mikey's put Sharp would probably lose to Boy Jones Jr. At this stage. He should fight some gatekeepers first. Yeah, I agree. Give him some experience against some slightly, you know, more durable opponents who've maybe got a few more wins under his record. There's no need to rush him, I guess. So yeah, that's the card. We've briefly touched on every fight. Yeah, massive highlight for me was Boy Jones Jr. versus Craig Poxton. I haven't enjoyed a fight that much since Chisora White last year. Really got into it. And I really wanted to see how the judges would have scored it had it gone the distance. You know, I wonder if they'd have had it closer than I had it. But I had Poxton winning very comfortably, 7-3 or 8-2. You know, I wonder if it would have been a draw. Well, obviously not when the knockdowns happened. You know, it slipped away at that point. But prior to that, I wonder if it could have been, you know, a controversial scorecard, because Boy Jones was doing some things very well in there. You know, he just, you know, he was just getting caught a lot. But I hope Boy Jones Jr. comes again. I like him as a fighter, and I'd certainly pay my money to watch Poxton fight again. Mikey says, BG, do you agree Boy Jones gets wrecked by Townend? I haven't actually seen much as Townend. Matt Spink says, Poxton versus Ward. Poxton versus Ward is a good fight. I do believe Poxton would be more effective the weight class below, because he was very small in there. And Ward's another guy who's quite rangy. Ward's a more sophisticated boxer than Boy Jones Jr. He uses the jab well. He uses distance very well. He's quite light on his feet. You know, you can tell he's got strong amateur pedigree, unlike Boy Jones Jr. You know, he dances in the ring very nicely. But I've always thought Ward is quite fragile around the chin. And I've always thought that he may be susceptible to a pressure fighter. So I'd see that right now as a 50-50 fight, if I'm honest. Poxton, he's got the style for Ward. Does he have the power and the size? Would Ward be able to control it? I don't know. Modern broadcasters put Hillman versus Poxton would be a war. You know, there's some real good Southern area English level fights. Mikey's put Townend smashed Poxton in 1 round, mate. Got outclassed by Martin Ward, but has dynamite in both hands. I must have seen him fight once or twice. I just can't recall it off the top of my head now. But yeah, there we are, guys. Been live now for about 48 minutes, it says. So slightly longer than anticipated. But I wanted to cover this card. I like these kind of builds. It is what it is. You know, I know that's an awful phrase, but when you sit down to watch one of these builds, you know you're not sitting down to watch world level boxing. But sometimes I find it really entertaining to see these prospects coming through. Sometimes I find it really entertaining to see small hall classic scraps that you get in these fights. As someone put in the chat earlier, Matchroom are launching a similar concept with their next generation shows, which are going to be their prospects in small halls, and that's something I'll certainly support and cover on the channel as well. So I enjoy these kind of stuff, fights, and want to say a thank you to everyone who's watched live tonight, who's joined me in the chat tonight, and yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed tonight's stream and tonight's show. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. I've got a few videos to put up tomorrow, and we'll cover tomorrow's boxing as well. Mikey's put you going for a run now, Gossip. I'm certainly not, Mikey. I'm going to bed, mate. I'm absolutely exhausted. But yeah, thanks very much for tuning in, guys. Final plea to hit the thumbs up button. Obviously, this will be uploaded to the channel after. So if you're watching it not live, you're watching it as it's been uploaded later, please hit the thumbs up button. That counts just as much. Do subscribe. Trying to build out the channel in 2017, so really appreciate every new subscriber. Lee put, keep up the good work, BG. Cheers, Lee. Jared put, been a pleasure, BG. Well done, mate. Thanks, Jared. Always appreciate the support, mate. Amir Khan's Chin says, good stream, Gossip. Mikey says, great show, mate. Speak soon. Mike Bailey says, Poxton has improved since Ward. Rob says he's still here, mate, but couldn't comment because he's with his missus. Cheers, Rob. Modern Broadcast says, nice one. Need these post-fight pods. Yeah, well, we'll see if I can do another one tomorrow. But yeah, I'm going to try and do some live. I'd like to commentate live on the Dave Allen fight if I can. I have to check in and see if I can find a running order. But I believe Matchroom are going to do at least some fights on Facebook Live. So I'll try and do, maybe an hour live commentary, then sign off, and then maybe do something similar tomorrow night. Ben says, cheers, Gossip. Try and do commentary tomorrow. I'll try, mate. Gregor says, thank you. Good job. Cheers, mate. Patrick Boyle says, nice one, BG. Cheers, Patrick. Anyway, guys, on that note, I'll sign off and say good night. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys have enjoyed the York Hall boxing tonight and enjoyed the live show. Catch you all soon.